Hello REDAC committee members, this is Jake and just wanted to provide you with some updates from our last meeting on January 15th. So we did a check-in, we did our purpose, a reminder of that, and our focus was the compensation information for a big part of our meeting. We did a check-in about what we're looking forward to in 2025, reviewed our purpose, and our purpose for that day was to look at the revisions that we made to our MOU and our compensation possibilities. We looked at our Roseville MOU draft, and we talked about the different areas that we had added to that from the last time. Part of it are the things that you see that are highlighted in yellow. So you can see all those different areas that we highlighted and made changes to. We discussed them as a group and felt like they were good to go, but just wanted to share that with you all as well. So if you wanted to look through that, if you weren't able to be there, just to see what the changes were in more depth. The other part that we talked about was compensation. So one of the things that we found out just recently was that there is some new requirements for teachers that are going to go through phase 2. There will be new trainings that are going to be options for teachers who are going through that phase 2, which is more of like our English language arts for secondary teachers. And just so you all have an awareness, any phase 2 teachers can't be signed up for training until January of 2026. And then that training begins the fall of 2026. So only people in phase 1 can now be signing up for training that's going to be happening for next year. So it doesn't have a major impact, but just is another consideration as we are moving people through our system, so that there's going to be some new training options, and there also won't be able to start that until the fall of 2026. Which means that they have to be done by July 1st of 2027. A reminder of the REDAC compensation information. All of this top part was from the Minnesota Department of Education, and then this is our total amount that we have to divide up. What Brandon and I then looked at was what are the totals that we have that are from our different cohorts and groups. So when we looked at these different cohorts, these are the names that we gave our different cohorts as well. Cohort 1 was that letters MDE. There was about 69 teachers within there. They're not receiving any MOU compensation because they had prior compensation for units 1 through 4 and 5 through 8. Cohort 1B had 16 people, and they were receiving 1 MOU stipend for units 5 through 8. Cohort 2, they are 137 folks in that cohort. They're receiving 2 MOU stipends for units 1 through 5 and 5 through 8. Cohort 3 was our carry-all group. They are about 50 people receiving 1 stipend for modules 1 through 8. Cohort 4 was our letters for early childhood, and we had 12 people that we have registered so far that we figured out, and they're receiving 1 MOU stipend for units 1 through 4. And cohort 5, again, there is about 31 people that we are thinking about for letters 2025. Those would be some of our elementary folks that have not been trained yet, and they would get 2 MOU stipends for units 1 through 4 and 5 through 8. And then cohort 6 would be that secondary group that's coming through. We think there's about 26 people that would be receiving probably about 1 stipend, and again, we're not quite sure how long that training will be, since they're adding 2 additional new trainings, and they might be significantly less time than we had before. So you notice that each of these cohorts, except for the letters MDE cohort, has a 1x, 2x, or a 0.5x next to them, that's because we started to do some math and solving for the x. So the x is based on the total amount of PD hours. So we had to figure out how many teachers we had and then multiply that by solving for our x. So, for example, the letters MDE cohort of those 1B folks, they had just one, basically one compensation stipend that they would get for completing modules 5 through 8. So they would equal about 16 people. The letters cohort 2022, they actually get 2 of the MOU compensation stipends. So we had to factor in that there would be like 274 total amount of stipends for that. So we went through and solved it for all of our folks. We had 341 teachers that went through, but 434 stipends that would go through. One thing that I didn't mention is that the letters pre-K was a shorter amount of time, as we looked through and got information from MDE around how much time it takes to go through that. So it was about a half of a stipend. And so those people were given a 6 for their stipends out of the 12. So that's just how the math works out for all of those things. So 434 was our dividing number. So we looked at our REDAC compensation from MDE, which was our 293,000, divided by that total number of stipends, which was 434, which gave us the stipend amount of around $676.86. Now, we also talked about of some questions that we had. So how much is the stipend amount if we factor in the benefits? So as a part of every stipend that we give, we have to factor in the taxes and like the FICA, the TRA, those types of things that come out of it. So to be able to pay to that amount, it might only be like $600 that we give to folks to factor in some of those benefits. And then we talked about another question that we had was, how much should we set aside? Do we set aside more for people that are coming beyond 2027? Do we hold on to that? And what do we do with that? Or do we just, are we comfortable distributing it to the people that are here now that goes through the end of the READ Act? Anything else that we should consider? We also threw that out there as a question for the group. So our next meeting, we need to talk about the number of letters for early childhood educators that went through that training. We're not sure if 12 is that right number, so we need to make sure we solidify that number. Kenyatta was going to work with Sherry around what percentage should we hold back for tax. And then we also talked about the communication that needs to come out that'll explain, the information about, money that's withheld and how we got to that stipend amount. And then we could consider in an information center session at the district for people who want to attend and learn more about the process that we go through. We talked about after we finish a couple more of our pieces with our MOU committee to bring that idea back to the LMC. And then I am going to reach out to other districts of teaching and learning in the metro to see if we're comparable to that, because some people had heard there was a lot more that other districts are giving, or we even saw some of that in our model MOUs that other districts are giving out to people. So we wanted to check in and see if we're way off base with ours. So that was our meeting for that time, and this was our closing. Hopefully we'll see you coming up at our next meeting on January 29th, Wednesday, January 29th. Thanks.